People are laughing, talking, smiling, but you feel far away. You say something. They hear the words, but not the meaning. You explain yourself. They nod, but don't really understand. You try again, softer this time, simpler. Still, nothing. It's like you speak a different language, like you're too much or too strange, and slowly you start to believe it. Maybe I am the problem. So you stay quiet. You pretend to fit in. You wear the right mask, but deep down, it hurts. Because the truth is, you feel things more deeply. You think about life in ways others don't. You ask questions they don't even notice, and for some reason that makes you feel alone. You scroll through your phone. You see faces, words, noise, all the time. You're surrounded by people, but you've never felt more invisible. Why does no one understand you? Is it you, or is it something bigger, something darker? This isn't just social anxiety. This isn't about being shy. It's something deeper, something in your soul. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most misunderstood philosophers in history, felt the same. He once said, "Some are born posthumously. Some are born too early for the world to recognize them." Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're ahead. Maybe you see something others can't, and that's exactly why they can't see you. And maybe Nietzsche wasn't warning you about the world. Maybe he was warning the world about you. Friedrich Nietzsche lived most of his life in silence. Not because he wanted to, but because the world wasn't ready to hear him. In his time, people called him insane. They said he was dangerous, arrogant, or simply too strange. But maybe they called him crazy because he made them uncomfortable, because he said things they didn't want to admit. Nietzsche wasn't writing for everyone. He made that clear. He said, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." He knew that truth isn't popular, that real thinkers, the ones who see what others ignore, are often seen as a threat. Most people want comfort. They want simple answers, easy beliefs, a sense of belonging. But Nietzsche, he offered none of that. He questioned everything: religion, morality, politics, even truth itself. And for that, he was exiled, not by force, but by misunderstanding. People read his words, but they didn't see him. Even today, many still don't. But here's the strange part. Nietzsche wasn't trying to become famous. He wasn't writing to impress anyone. He was writing to someone he called the one who comes after. He believed there would be people years later who would finally understand him. Not crowds, not the masses, but a few rare souls, people who feel like strangers in the world, just like he did, people like you. He once said, "I am not a man, I am dynamite," not because he wanted to destroy, but because he knew that truth can explode illusions. Nietzsche wasn't warning the world about madness. He was warning it about what happens when deep minds are ignored, dismissed, or silenced. He knew the world would always fear the ones who see too far, because those are the ones who break illusions and rebuild truth. And maybe that's why you feel the way you do, because like Nietzsche, you weren't meant for the crowd, you were meant for the truth. Have you ever wondered why people misunderstand you? Why they seem to pull away when you speak your truth? Why the more real you are, the more uncomfortable they become? It's not just about personality. It's not about being weird or different. There's something deeper going on, something psychological. When you speak in a way that challenges what others believe, their brain doesn't process it like a normal conversation. It feels like an attack. This is called cognitive dissonance, a mental discomfort people feel when their beliefs are challenged. So instead of listening, they shut down, they deny, they laugh, or worse, they label you. Too intense, too negative, too much. But in truth, you're not too much. You're just too awake for their comfort. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He believed that most people live in what he called herd morality. It means the crowd follows easy rules, not because they're right, but because they're safe, because everyone else believes them. And anyone who steps outside the herd, anyone who questions the rules, they're seen as a threat. The herd doesn't want thinkers, it wants followers, obedience, simplicity, agreement. But what if you were born to think, to see what others avoid, to feel truth even when it hurts? That's not a flaw, that's clarity. But clarity has a cost, because the clearer you see, the more alone you become. Psychologists call this the burden of awareness. the more aware you are of what's fake, what's shallow, what's broken, the harder it is to pretend. And most people are pretending to be happy, pretending to belong, pretending they don't see the cracks. But you notice the cracks first. You ask, why are we doing this? What's the point? Isn't there more than this? And those questions make others uncomfortable. Not because they're wrong, but because they're too real. So people misunderstand you, not because you're unclear, but because they're not ready to understand. They can't see the world the way you do. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And Nietzsche warned us about this. He said that truth doesn't come gently, that deep perception isolates you, not because you're broken, but because you're awake in a world that's still sleeping. And the sad truth is, the more clearly you see the world, the less clearly the world will see you. Nietzsche didn't just warn about being misunderstood, he warned about something bigger, something more dangerous, a system, a culture, a slow, invisible war not fought with weapons, but with comfort. He called it decadence, a sickness that happens when a society becomes too soft, too afraid, too empty. At first it looks like progress, more safety, more equality, more peace. But under the surface, something is dying, the individual. You see it today, everywhere. People scrolling endlessly, repeating the same words, sharing the same opinions, afraid to stand out and afraid to be real. We live in a world full of voices, yet no one really speaks, full of faces, yet no one really sees. Nietzsche saw this coming long before smartphones, before social media, before algorithms. He predicted a future where mass culture would flatten the human spirit, where society would reward the obedient and punish the deep, and now that future is here. Schools don't teach you how to think. They teach you how to remember, how to follow, how to fit in. The workplace doesn't care about truth. It cares about results, deadlines, metrics, performance. Online, the loudest voices win, not the wisest. Say something clever and you'll get likes. Say something real and you'll get silence, or worse, backlash. We've built a system that fears original thought, because original thought cannot be controlled. Nietzsche wrote about the last man, a type of human that lives only for comfort, who avoids pain, risk, or depth, who thinks life is just about being entertained, being liked, being safe. The last man blinks. That's how Nietzsche described him. A creature so dull that he doesn't even suffer anymore, because he's already given up everything that made him human. No courage, no hunger, no truth. The last man fits in perfectly because he's given up his voice to join the crowd. But what about you? You don't fit in, not because you failed, but because you haven't surrendered. You still feel something. You still notice when things are fake. You still carry questions the world wants you to forget. And that makes you dangerous, not to yourself, but to the system. Because the system thrives on sameness. And you're not the same. You were never meant to be. Nietzsche believed the individual, the true individual, is a threat to this culture of mediocrity. Because the individual remembers what society forgets. That life is not about comfort, it's about becoming. It's about waking up, even if it hurts. So if you've ever felt like you don't belong, like your thoughts are too sharp, like your emotions are too heavy, it's because you're still alive in a world that's gone numb. The war isn't just against you, it's against everything you represent. Depth, truth, integrity, realness. And in this war, your silence is their victory. Your voice is your rebellion. So far, we've seen the signs. You don't fit in. You see through the noise. You question what others accept. And maybe for most of your life, you thought that was the problem. But Nietzsche saw it differently. He didn't believe the outsider was broken. He believed the outsider was necessary, not to follow the world, but to challenge it. He called this rare type of person the Übermensch, often translated as the overman or beyond man. But this wasn't about being better than others. It was about becoming more than what the world expects of you. The Übermensch doesn't ask for approval. He doesn't wait to be understood. He creates his own values, his own meaning, even when the world calls him mad. You must become who you are. That was Nietzsche's command, to stop hiding, to stop apologizing, to stop watering yourself down for people who never saw your depth in the first place. Because the truth is, if you want to stay safe, stay small. But if you want to live fully, to be awake, to think freely, to speak truth, You have to be willing to become dangerous. Not violent, not reckless, but dangerous in the way a flame is to dry wood, in the way truth is to a lie, in the way light is to blindness. Nietzsche knew this would be hard. That's why he wrote about the loneliness of becoming. When you stop living for the herd, you lose the herd. Friends will fade, people will mock you, you'll question yourself more than once. But slowly, something begins to happen. You become strong, not just on the outside, but within. You become someone who doesn't need permission, who doesn't need applause, who walks alone not because they want to, but because they must. And that's when you become a threat, not to people, but to illusions, to systems, to all the fake comfort that keeps the world asleep. Nietzsche's warning wasn't just a message, it was a call to transformation, a challenge to burn away everything weak, fake, and borrowed, so you could finally step into what you really are, a builder, a breaker, a mirror, a fire, the one who sees the world as it is and still dares to create something better. Let's be honest, fitting in felt like survival. You tried, you really did. You smiled when you were breaking. You stayed silent when you knew better. You let others define you, hoping maybe then they'd finally understand. But they didn't, not because you were wrong, but because you were never supposed to belong to them. And now, maybe you're starting to see it. Your loneliness wasn't a flaw, it was a signal, a sign that you were never meant to walk the path everyone else chose. Because people like you, the ones who ask too many questions, who feel too much, think too deeply, and never quite blend in, you weren't made to fit. You were made to wake others up. And yes, it's heavy. Yes, it hurts. But Nietzsche knew this burden well. He believed that some people are born with a truth so sharp, it cuts through the fabric of the world. And those who were seen dancing were thought to be mad by those who could not hear the music. That's you. You're dancing to a rhythm others can't hear. You're speaking a truth they were never taught to understand. And that's okay, because your purpose was never to be liked. It was to be real. Your pain, that was your honesty. Your silence, that was your depth. Your isolation, that was the cost of being awake while others sleep. But you're not alone anymore. Others like you exist, scattered, hidden, rising. And when you speak, when you live fully, when you stop apologizing for who you are, they hear you, they find you, they remember who they are too. Nietzsche didn't write for the crowd. He wrote for you, for the future, for the few who would carry the fire forward, even in the darkest night. So here's the truth, as simple as it is hard. You were never meant to fit in, because you were born to stand out, to challenge, to create, to remember what the world wants to forget. And now, it's your turn. Not to explain yourself, not to shrink, but to walk forward, fully, freely, dangerously awake. Because when you finally stop trying to be understood by the crowd, you'll start becoming understood by yourself. And that is where everything begins.